Good morning. This is the Reverend Susan Burnham from St. George Episcopal Church in San Antonio, Texas. I welcome you to this second class for the Intro to New Testament as part of our Adult Education on Demand. I thank you for joining me today. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Gospels and a bit of an overview. Um, and you'll see I have a little song on the first slide. It says, "Some of these things are not like the others, and some of these things are kind of the same." I think you'll recall that. And let's get started and we'll talk about it. The four Gospels. So we've got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are known as the Synoptics because they can be read side by side. So that's what synoptics means. John is kind of in a different category. He focuses on Christ as the source of life. And the Gospel of John was written to diverse people in diverse places. And it's focused around the seven signs or the seven miracles of Jesus. And they all begin with something that says, "The kingdom of God is at hand." So let's talk a little bit about what they call the Synoptic Problem. Why do Matthew, Mark, and Luke look so similar? Because Matthew, Mark, and Luke present the story of Jesus in a very similar manner. You've probably realized this being an Episcopalian, that we read a lot of scripture in church, and you'll notice that sometimes you don't even think about which gospel you're reading because sometimes it just doesn't matter. They all kind of say the same thing, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Some people think that the authors shared a common source, and some believe this is quite a long time ago. I think it started with Augustine or something, is the first person we know about. Some believe Matthew wrote first and Mark came by later and abbreviated Matthew. And some people also think that Mark used Luke as well. So we've got Matthew's gospel, Mark sits down and uses Matthew's gospel and also uses Luke. So that's one idea. There are some other suggestions, one of which is that they simply shared an oral tradition. Everyone was kind of saying the same stories about Jesus and his life and teachings, and therefore they look similar. This is a bit problematic for a lot of people because of how similar they are. We all have different life perspectives, so to speak, and I would be hard pressed to say that I would come through and write a story about an event the exact same way that Father Rim would come through and write the exact same story about an event. So while the shared oral tradition is a feasible hypothesis, there are some issues with it. Second, that they had a common written source. This is pretty widely accepted that they probably had a common written source. We have some hypotheses on that I'll talk about in just a second. But this is the pretty widely accepted that yes, they probably had something else in front of them. Third, the authors used each other's materials, which kind of works and kind of doesn't, because the dating of the Gospels is pretty different. So if John came last, and of course we're not even talking about John, but if John came last, how did he, or if Mark came first, how did he use John? Basically, so not that anyone used John. John's Gospel is a different story altogether, but it is possible. Multi-document hypothesis. We're going to get into this a little further, but it goes along with the common written source. It's just that there's more than one document, more than one source, and there's a two-source theory and a four-source theory that we'll talk about. And then the independent hypothesis, which is they just use their own brains, um, and that's that. And this is just what happened. Um, Most of the scholars today think that Mark wrote first, and that Matthew and Luke expanded on his story. That's what most people will go with today. Um, Today, people, like I said, think that Mark came first and the other two used his gospel. And when we break it down, Matthew and Luke use 95% of Mark. Matthew itself contains all but 40 verses of Mark. And Matthew and Luke have about 200 verses in common that are not in Mark. So we're looking at a third possible source that they call Q, which stands for quell, which just means papyrus or document, whatever you want to call it. So we call it Q. And so there's a two source theory that is Matthew and Luke used Q and Mark. So that's the two source theory. The four source theory, it looks kind of silly. And at this point, you know, they teach us this stuff. So we talk about it. But the four source theory is that there's Q, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So basically, that just goes along with everybody's kind of using everybody else's stuff, which is fine. There's no copyright laws back then. So these are the synoptic hypotheses, if you will, about how these gospels became to be. Most people think that Mark came between 63 and 68 AD. Luke and Matthew came between 70 and 85. But then again, a lot of people think uh, that all the gospels can be dated between 50 and 70. So there's just it's not even worth putting on a slide because nobody agrees on these things anymore, or if they ever did. So this is the four source, or the synoptic problem. And next, we're going to be looking at some stuff that's a little more fun. We're going to look at the overview of the Gospel of Matthew, because Matthew is first in our New Testament. So thanks for joining me today. Please feel free to email me with questions, and I will see you soon.